Welcome back to the Deal Mastery Insider. Today, we're going to look at Disney's money machine and show you how roll-ups can create billions and billions of dollars of value. I love this case study. It's one of my all-time favorites. So let's jump in. Here's a quick disclaimer. Now, Disney. Say what you will about Disney. Some people don't like what they've done with some of the IP that they've acquired, but they've unlocked a tremendous amount of value, and the money machine that they've built and done this with, to me, is truly fascinating. So they've done let's move this around a little bit. They've done several high-profile acquisitions that have massively added to their content library and plugged into the existing money machine that they've created, which I think is great, right? So we're probably familiar with Marvel, Pixar, Lucasfilm, 21st Century Fox, all of these different IPs and assets that Disney's acquired. And when you look at how they fit into Disney's flywheel and its entire business model, it's really, really cool. And if you want a more narrative version of this story, The Ride of a Lifetime by Bob Iger is a great book that unpacks this in even more detail and tells his perspective as the CEO of Disney as he went through a lot of these acquisitions. So with that, let's jump in. When you look at Disney's flywheel, right? Disney has all of these different means of monetizing a piece of intellectual property. So they've got the parks, the cruise lines, their media networks, Disney Plus, they got Hulu, ESPN, they have their creative studio, games, tons of consumer products, books, clothes, toys, pretty much everything imaginable, right? And they take a piece of intellectual property and then they can put it through each one of these different buckets and create a ton of economic value, right? So let's look at a couple examples of this. I think is really, really cool. Now, here's another way of looking at this. Disney started with just their traditional IP base, The Lion King, Aladdin, the classics, right? And then they started in the sort of 2000s saying, hey, we really want to expand this. So first big move they made, they bought Pixar. That added a massive amount of intellectual property to the entire framework. Then they bought Marvel. Then they bought Star Wars. Then they bought all kinds of other things, National Geographic, all sorts of stuff now, right? And their business model, this is pulled from their financial reports, their 10K basically. If you look at this, they take each of these brands, right? So they have this IP generation strategy, which they've got their entertainment studios, which generate new intellectual property, i.e. they come out with a new Disney movie, a new theme, whatever it is. And then they acquire huge brands like Lucasfilm, Marvel Studios, etc. And they also, add all of that stuff together. And so they take any one of these pieces of IP and feed it into this money machine, right? So if you buy, and again, you might not like what they've done with it, but when we look at the economics of it, it's crazy how much value this has unlocked. They take a single piece of intellectual property and they run it through all of these imaginable channels, new action figures, new products, new books, new movies, new TV shows, new streaming networks, all kinds of different stuff. It's such a cool model. And I really, really think it's interesting, right? This is another way of kind of looking at it. They have all of these different monetization strategies, films, video games, books, TV shows, toys, everything you could imagine, board games. They take a piece of intellectual property, they purchase it, and then they put it through the entire money machine. I think it's genius. Any one of those intellectual properties is being monetized multifold, and then you add in the fact that they keep acquiring these huge treasure troves of IP, and each one of them is monetized again and again and again and again, which is really cool. So let's look at a couple of these specific case studies to showcase what I'm talking about. Pixar, right? They acquired it in 2006 for $7.4 billion. The strategic rationale was pretty obvious, right? They had some great animated IPs, and it would also be a really good strategic asset for Disney in terms of adding animation capabilities to their business. The value that created, post-acquisition, Pixar films have grossed over $1 billion each consistently, right? So Toy Story 3, Finding Dory, all this kind of stuff. And the technologies alone have made them pretty much the preeminent animated content studio creator on planet Earth, right? So this $7.4 billion has created billions and billions and billions of dollars for Disney. Marvel. This is one that's a little more controversial in the sense that people feel like Marvel Universe, they've just done so many things and they're kind of tired of all the content, the IP, and the things that they've created. But just look at the math on this, right? Just from a business standpoint, however you feel about the Marvel IP, they bought Marvel in 2009 for $4 billion. The rationale was obvious. They had a huge portfolio of characters and intellectual property. Any single one of those pieces of intellectual property, new toys, new rides, new events, new games, new books, new shows, new movies, and then you multiply that by all of the different characters in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, It's a crazy amount of value that they've unlocked, right? So the value creation, again, $4 billion purchase price. All of these things have become multi-billion dollar franchises. The Avengers, Black Panther, you name it, Deadpool, all of these massive Marvel things that have come out, right? Their characters have generated substantial revenue from toys, apparel, merch, etc., and massively contributed to Disney's bottom line. The estimate is that the MCU, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, has generated more than $29 billion in box office revenue since Disney bought it. $4 billion purchase, $29 billion, and that's just in the box office. That's not talking about rides, attractions, streaming, toys, books, clothes, all of the stuff you could think about that's coming off of any single one of these pieces of intellectual property. So it's truly astounding the amount of value that they've been able to create from this acquisition because they built up this money machine, which is genius. Lucasfilm, another one. They've done a lot of Star Wars content, right? And I'm a huge Star Wars fan, big Indiana Jones fan. And, all the content they've created, not all of it's amazing, but a lot of it's pretty good. And it's no questions created a lot of economic value, right? So they bought it in 2012 for $4 billion, just over $4 billion. Added Star Wars, Indiana Jones, all kinds of stuff. Obviously, they've done a lot with the theme parks to enhance that from a value creation standpoint. The new Star Wars franchise generated more than $10 billion in just box office revenues, plus all of the stuff, The Mandalorian, Galaxy's Edge, all of these other things they've been able to create. And they've added billions and billions of dollars of licensing revenue just from the single $4 billion acquisition. So the returns on this are amazing because they've built this infrastructure. They have a way to monetize this intellectual property. Then they add a new piece of IP into the top of the hopper, and it gets distributed through everything, creating this massive flywheel of value that they keep unlocking. Another treasure trove of content they acquired, 21st Century Fox, or formerly 20th Century Fox. They bought it for $71 billion in 2019. Same rationale, huge content library, boosted their streaming services, things like The Simpsons, Avatar, FX, Hulu, all kinds of stuff. And it's helped them reach more than 100 million subscribers with Disney Plus because now they have this huge treasure trove of content. Another way to think about this, which is really interesting, is if you think about a company like Netflix, which has obviously been massively successful. Netflix is just Disney Plus. Now imagine a company that has Netflix plus all the theme parks, all the rides, all the ability to monetize every piece of intellectual property that comes in the door with toys, games, books, anything you can think of, right? Plus, this deal alone saved them $2 billion in cost synergies after they purchased it, right? Just from combining some of their operating effects. So there's all kinds of really powerful economics that Disney's been able to unlock. I think this is a great case study of looking at the power of mergers and acquisitions and how to take the existing infrastructure that you've built. In this case, Disney built this incredible money machine framework, which just go back and look at it really quickly. They built this entire ecosystem where they could basically take a piece of intellectual property and run it through every monetization strategy imaginable. Disney Plus, new movies, new shows, new streaming, new toys, new parks, new things on their cruise ships, everything you can imagine. An incredible way for them to unlock a huge amount of economic value. So I think this is a great case study in a really powerful business and a really powerful business strategy and a use case for how mergers and acquisitions can create tremendous billions and billions and billions of dollars, in this case, tremendous economic value. I hope you enjoyed this. Hit reply. Let me know what you think about this. I'd love to hear your perspective on Disney and how they used mergers to create an incredible money machine.